that our cue?
It's your cue.
Okay, so welcome to the October 14th meeting of Tulsa Airport Improvement Trust, Tulsa Airport Authority. And I would like to call the meeting to order. And first item of business is approval of the combined minutes of September 9th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries. Financial and operating reports.
So I'll kick things off today. It's hard to believe, but we're in the fourth quarter and our team is really looking at our business plan and looking at those items that we have to wrap up for the end of the fourth quarter. We have the ticket counter project that is nearly complete. I think we have maybe by the end of December, beginning of January, that will be all done. The West Runway project is wrapping up. So by mid-November, that new runway surface will be open for our tenants on the west side. Our customer experience team is out doing surveys. And so we want to have all of our passenger surveys done before the end of the year. And then, of course, we have a lot of new flights that are coming on board in the next month and a half or so. And Andrew's going to give you an update on air service and activity and what we're seeing in terms of future interest and demand for travel. I told you every meeting I'm going to talk about the tower. And so this month, I wanted to kind of give an update on the AFTIL 2 process. Frank was in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago with representatives from our tower. Who looked at both sites and looked at the view, the layout, the height. And you can see on the drawing the existing tower location. And then site 1 is located just a little bit west of that location. And site 2 is really pretty much adjacent to the existing location. They're very close in height. The site 1 height is 247, I believe. 243. And then the site 2 height was 229. Frank's the expert here. So very similar in height. I think, our initial thought was site 2 was favorable because of its proximity to the existing location. There's utilities and everything already there. But the air traffic controllers are pretty adamant that site 1 is their preferred location because it's more centrally located between the parallel runways, especially the west runway. When they're looking west, when the sun is setting, it's kind of difficult to see the smaller planes. And so the site 1 location, they felt provided them the best option for their needs. And so we're prepared to support that request. Frank and I talked about it. We had a call on Monday with the engineering and architectural firm that we hope to have a contract with at next month's meeting. And we are going to support site 1 as the location unless something crazy comes back with the environmental, which we don't think that will happen. Also, next week, from what I've heard, Congress is set to vote on the infrastructure bill. So the Senate's already passed it. It's in the House. There's a lot of debate in the House about it. But from what I've read yesterday, they are planning on separating the infrastructure bill from the other bill that they were trying to get passed together. And that would be great news for us in terms of potential federal funding to help support the tower project. And as soon as that does pass, if it does pass, we will begin our outreach with the federal FAA officials to garner their support for our project. The only other thing I really wanted to update you all on is the federal vaccine mandate and the potential impact for our employees. Patty did a survey with our employees this past week to determine how many of our employees are vaccinated. And of those who are not vaccinated, which would they consider becoming vaccinated if it became a mandate? So 58% of our employees are vaccinated today. 58. The 42% who are not, 80% of those folks, which it was 26 people in the survey, said that they would not become vaccinated if it became a requirement. So what we know about the federal contract portion of the mandate is that once that contract language is put into one of our federal agreements, so we have agreements with the FAA, TSA, GSA, I mean, we have several federal contracts. Starting November 14th, it will be required for any new agreement and then any option for a renewal of an agreement. They will be inserting that language in our contract. So when we're looking at future contracts, for instance, next month, we are going to have an agreement for the lease of the existing air traffic control tower. It's going to be retroactive to October 1st, I believe. And the language is optional between October 15th and November 14th. So if the FAA doesn't put it in the agreement, that buys us a little bit more time. But the first renewal of an agreement, and I believe the first one is the CDP agreement. It has an annual renewal. I believe it's in June of next year. Then we would be required to put that in we would require to implement the mandate for our employees. So what Jeff and Patty and our entire leadership team have been working on is looking at what kind of accommodations are available. And of course, there's the medical and religious accommodation, which we are going to offer to our employees. We did an employee like all call yesterday. You know, I told our employees, we don't want to lose anybody over this. I mean, we understand it's a personal decision, but we're going to provide these accommodations as we can. We hope you'll consider your options. But it's, you know, it's concerning to me that 42% of our workforce essentially could decide that this isn't the place for them to be because of that requirement. But I think the good news at this point is we don't have to implement it by the December 8th deadline. So we do have a little bit of time, but next month, you know, with the FAA contract for the tower, that will really be kind of a defining point for us to determine how we're going to proceed.
Is still the option, or is that on the private side where somebody doesn't get vaccinated, they would do a weekly test?
That is not an option for federal contractors. So if they choose to file a medical or religious accommodation, then the accommodation we can provide is a masking requirement. So when you're at work, you have to wear a mask, which most of us have to anyway right now. And then a testing requirement. So there will be a testing requirement as a component of the accommodation for those two exemptions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know this gets into privacy stuff, but with that 80% of the 40,
42,
whatever, 2%, would they quit?
So there's a group that's undecided. And I think, you know, at this point, a lot of people are just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. You know, one of the questions that came up in our Ask Alexis yesterday was, would the airport consider offering an incentive for employees to get vaccinated? My response to that is, I don't think an incentive is going, if you've decided it's not going to work for you, a $500 incentive isn't going to change your mind. I'm really going to encourage our team to look at their options. If they have a sincerely held religious belief, then file the form that allows them to describe that. If they have a medical condition, talk to their doctor and you know, get the doctor to sign the waiver. And you know, we're not unlike other people in our industry. Of course, Southwest and American announced recently that they had to comply by the December 8th deadline. And so I was listening to Gary Kelly, who said, look, we don't want to fire anybody. We don't want to let anybody go over this. And that's exactly how we feel as well. It's unfortunately where we're at today, and just something that we're going to have to comply with if we get to the point that that's inserted into the language. And then eventually this is hopefully going to go away. I mean, I hope it's not something that we're living with 5 years from now. But at this point, it's something that we're following. Our industry associations are following. We're asking for guidance. There was supposed to be additional agency guidance coming out last Friday. That still hasn't come out yet. I've been told that's with the White House. And there are no legal challenges to the federal contractor requirement. There are some pending related to the private sector requirement. So that particular one is on hold right now, but this one is not.
Have they said anything about plans that now that it's become clear that the vaccine itself is pretty much run its course by 8 months, which mine would be basically expired. And yet the FDA won't approve the booster for people under 65 unless there's like special circumstances. So are they saying now that once they get this done, they're going to turn around and make everyone get a booster?
There's nothing that mentions that in the guidance that we've
That goes
seen.
on to the 5 years and 10 years.
I think they've got so much on their plate with the first question, they don't even know face the second.
Yeah, that interesting.
Yeah. So it's just something we're watching. It's definitely on the minds of our employees, and
Our
we'll
hands
keep
are
you
tied.
posted. Yeah, they really are.
I mean, there's really nothing we can do, whether you like it, whether you don't like it. I mean, it's a federal mandate,
Right.
and just have to work through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whoever thought numbers were going to be so exciting compared to what I normally cover.
Pressure's on. Good morning. Today I'll be going over the August 2021 over August 2019 and the calendar year-to-date activity. Our revenues for August over August were down by about 3%, just a little under $118,000 difference between the 2 months. Our calendar year-to-date activity down about 16%, a $4.8 million difference between calendar year-to-date 19 versus 21. Our expenses, however, we're still tracking well below where we were prior calendar year, about 14%. That's about a $2.2 million difference from this year, this calendar year over past. And our net operating income is flat pretty much for August over August and down about 19% for the calendar year-to-date comparative. Our food and beverage, 33% down month over month and 48% down calendar year. That's about a $2.4 million difference between where we were in the calendar year comparative. Our retail down 4% calendar year, but we had a really good August, up 18%, a difference of about $82,000. So we're seeing some resurgence in our retail, and that's carrying forward in closing the gap in our calendar year-to-date comparative. Our parking activity down about 33% in ticket pulls, 31% in revenues. That's still down about $2.2 million from where we were prior year, but we are seeing the gap starting to slowly close there as well. Our ground transportation down 49% for the calendar year-to-date comparative, 38%, and that includes our Ubers, Lyfts, taxis, and such. And our transaction days for rental cars down about 41% in the annual comparative. Operations at RVS only 4% down for the month to month, 13% down for the calendar year. We're seeing a lot of the flight schools doing their touch and goes at less busy airports, but our fuel flows 15% up and 9% calendar year to date. We're just seeing larger aircraft utilize RVS. Our plane passengers down about 28% in the calendar year comparative, about 284,000 less passengers utilizing TUL in the calendar year to date comparative. And our cargo down about 9% calendar year to date comparative. This next slide just kind of tracks our calendar year to date activity for revenues over the last 4 calendar year to dates. The yellow line is 2020. As you can see, we really hit bottom in August, kind of seeing growth there as the summer went on. But the dark green line, almost black line, is where we are today. We have matched pretty much where we were in August of 2018, and we're starting to close that gap in 2021 to 19's numbers. The next slide shows our expenses. We're following the same trajectory that we followed in past history. We do see a dip in June of this year, but in June, we're doing our audit adjusting entries, We reserved a lot more than we typically do for bad debt because of the uncertainty of COVID and what our impact it would have on our tenants. We had to reverse those numbers out, as well as we had a inventory true up. We've been working on adjusting our inventory and really tightening things up over the course of the fiscal year. And that entry is reflected in here. Without those entries, we'd be closer to the same triangle peak in June, but our expenses are still operating well below where they have been in prior fiscal years and calendar years. The next slide just kind of shows our activity of employments. We're starting to follow that seasonal trend. Not quite where we were in 2019, but the trend is mimicking the historic trends. The next slide compares where we are budget to date. We are 2 months into our current fiscal year. We're tracking about 25% ahead of revenues from what we anticipate to be in the budget. And the big change there is our parking activity, up about $740,000, making up the majority of the difference there of the $1.4 million excess, and followed by our passenger carrier activity. So our activity-based revenue is starting to see a resurgence, coming back a little stronger than we anticipated, but again, we're only 2 months into the fiscal year, so we've got a lot of fiscal year to cover. Our expenses still tracking below anticipated budget, about 14%, netting out to about $500,000 less than we thought we'd be, creating a net of about $2 million greater than we thought we'd be based on our budget. Our calendar year-to-date comparative, we're still below our revenues. The big areas where we have ground to make up are parking and passenger activity, and our CFCs, which are part of our miscellaneous revenues, $4.8 million below where we were 2 calendar years ago. And our expenses, again, a net difference of about 14% in savings, closing that gap slightly between the net of the revenues versus the expenses, but there's still about a $2.6 million gap between where we were prior to calendar years. And this next slide shows our our cash days of liquidity based on September's numbers. Previous month, we're about 320 days of cash on hand. This month, about 325. Our budgeted burn rate of $2.6 million gives us about $71.5 thousand a month for a burn rate for expenses. Our debt service, we are 3 months into our debt service payment. No issues in covering that. This number of 15 million does not reflect the refinancing. We're still calculating those annual adjustments for the refinancing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Our reserve fund, $17.9 million. We'll readjust those accordingly based on our debt service requirements for our bond indenture once we calculate our annual. But we have about 14 months worth of excess for our debt service as it stands today. And our bond, as I emailed to the board a few weeks ago, we priced on September 21st. We really hit the market well. We had a really good team in place that everything lined up for us. We have significant savings to report to the board. We saved about $14.3 million in gross savings over the life of the bond. That's just a little less than $600,000 per month for the next 24 months for TAIT. And we have a net present value of about $9 million. We started this process back in March of 2020, pre-early pandemic when the nation shut down. I revisited some of those emails. Had we proceeded on that trajectory and there was no pandemic, we would have not recognized the savings that we recognize today. We actually exceeded those savings by about $883,000 in our gross savings and about $410,000 in our net present value. So we really were able to maximize our savings, even though COVID is real and we've had a lot of issues because of it. To summarize, over the last 2 bond deals we've done, the 2020 A bond and the 2021 2020 B bond, we've recognized a gross savings of just over $17 million in those 2 different refinancings and a net present value of just over $11.1 million. So those refinancings have really helped our airport position ourselves for the future.
Great job.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
How's our valet doing? Is it look like people are coming back to it?
Yeah, we've, I talked to our Navdeep, our facilities manager. We have about 58 vehicles in inventory yesterday. So we are seeing about 30 to 50 vehicles to 60 vehicles fluctuation throughout the week. So we're starting to advertise it slightly. We're working on a program to for our parking perks to kind of add incentive to the valet program. That's just in the programmer's hands now. So we're waiting for that to kind of get updated, but we are seeing some increase in activity,
And that's
Staff.
about half of where we were before.
approximately.
How about staffing?
Staffing, she's been able to fully staff it.
Yeah.
She really had some hurdles like everybody has.
Yeah.
But she's been able to clear those hurdles fairly well. And she has a good support team in the last corporate office and our regional office support as well. So
Are we getting some rental cars? Are we doing any better with that?
I would say, I
I
mean,
think
we aren't hearing the complaints from customers
Oh,
like we
okay.
did a few months ago. So Sherry and Brian meet with the rental cars monthly now, the rental car managers, just to keep that communication line up. And the complaints were more so about staffing
Yeah.
Mhm.
than they
Yeah.
were about the availability of cars. But
Yeah.
Thank you.
and then Andrew's going to give an update on air service.
All right, good morning. So as Fabio kind of touched on, first, we're just gonna look at enplanements here. So really what we've seen, what we're looking at here, the pink line in the middle is our 2021 enplanements. The orange, you can see obviously the large drop off in April of 2020 when COVID really started hitting, but 2021, once the vaccine mandate really started to roll out, that's when we saw our enplanements start to come back pretty strongly. Our levels today, since vaccinations have started, we're about 80% of 2019. We were up to above 90% for July. And we typically see a little bit of a drop off in August, September as schools start to go back into session, compounded with the Delta variant, which had a little bit of an impact. But we just got September numbers yesterday and we're down about 15%. So actually a little bit stronger than I was anticipating, because you typically see September a little bit lower than August. So cautious, I would say, optimism for the fourth quarter of 2021. I think the one thing we need to look at is kind of with the vaccine mandate, what's going to happen with crews and all that kind of stuff. Is there going to be any sort of impact operationally like we've seen with Southwest here just over the last week. So we'll see how that goes. But again, we're optimistic with some of the stuff that we've got coming on that I'll talk about here in a little bit. In terms of capacity, so the number of seats in the market, kind of the same trend. We've been hovering about 90% of our capacity, 80 to 90% for the past 6 months or so. And you kind of see the last couple months here in 2021, we're getting closer to parity with 2019, largely driven by the additional new nonstops that we have coming online. But we'll see that December number will come down. I'm expecting a little bit. Typically the airlines right now are making adjustments about a month in advance. So I would assume that'll be down, 5 to 7% compared to 2019. But again, we're getting back closer to where we were. So that's exciting to see. So this is looking at our TSA throughput. The one thing that we like to highlight here is we're on top in the purple, and then the USA average is the pink line on the bottom. So we've been averaging anywhere between 8 to 10 percentage points higher in our throughput here through Tulsa throughout the pandemic compared to the US average. So it's really showing the strength of how we've come back throughout the pandemic, largely I think driven by Oklahoma as a state not necessarily shutting down as much as some other states, but it's good to see that we've rebounded so strongly. All right, so the exciting things. We have a really big November coming up here. So the first week of November, we have 3 new nonstops on American that are starting. So Austin daily will start November 2nd, once a day year round. Washington, DC the very next day, once daily, excluding Saturdays year round. And then on Saturdays, starting in November, on November 6th, Miami will start year round as well. So we're really excited about those. We started a marketing campaign, kind of give you a little highlight of it, that we're really excited about. This rolled out here in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll just kind of go through these. So we really wanted to highlight on, keep Austin weird. They're kind of nomenclature they're known for. So we have nonstop flights to nonstop weird, Tulsa to Austin. But now DC, we're kind of playing off the Constitution. We the people fly nonstop, Tulsa to DC, November 3rd. And then I really like the Miami one. The theme was go where summer never ends. Because you think about Miami, doesn't matter what time of the year, it's going to be nice weather there. You can go during the summer. If it gets really cold here in the winter, you can go there and still get the great weather and everything that there is to do in Miami. So excited about the campaign. That'll be running here for the next 2 to 3 months. And so hopefully we'll see some good traction from that going forward. And then a couple weeks later, Allegiant will be starting 3 new routes as well. They're starting Austin November 18th, twice a week. All of these will be Thursday, Sunday. So kind of hitting on the weekend traveler. Phoenix Mesa will start the same day, November 18th, and then Sarasota will be starting December 15th. So 3 more routes, and we're just about to kick off the marketing campaigns on those as well. And then obviously we've talked about Breeze, the newest airline here in Tulsa that started June, July. All 3 of these markets, New Orleans, Tampa, and San Antonio, are twice a week, Monday through Friday, year round, flexing up to to 3 to 4 times a week over the holiday periods, and hopefully that'll get back up to those 4 times a week levels as we get into spring break and beyond of 2022. So this is what our route map looked like in 2019. And then here are the additional 7 new destinations that we've added just in the past year. So that now puts us up to 25 nonstop routes, which is the most in TUL history. So we're going to work to make sure that we keep all of those. The only route that hasn't returned due to COVID is Delta to Minneapolis. That is scheduled to return in March of 2022. They've kind of refigured some smaller hub airports like us, and kind of focused their connectivity through more regional hubs that make sense. So we still have Salt Lake City is now 3 times a day. It's gone from 1 time a day to 3 times a day, with all the demand going to the west. And then if you're going to the east, you can get everywhere via Atlanta. So we'll be excited to get Minneapolis back, but that puts us at 25 nonstop routes.
Great job.
That's exciting. So one of the things I also wanted to share, over the past year, the data that we get typically in terms of passenger airfares is kind of a wash for 2020 since it was so low. So we've started subscribing to a new search data. So this is looking at roughly 75% of all the GDSs. So that's the Expedias, Savers, Google Flights of the world, to look, just looking at search demand out of Tulsa. So what we're looking at here, the blue line is 2019, the yellow, obviously, 2020, and then you can see the inflection point right about March of 2021 in red, where our search demand has just absolutely skyrocketed. So it's really exciting to see. This is something that we've really started to focus on with the airlines, to show that there is pent-up demand. People are ready to travel, and I'll kind of highlight which destinations we're seeing the most. This is still highly leisure driven. However, the airlines have said that small businesses are returning a lot quicker than some of the larger corporations that have some of the more stringent travel bans still in place, which plays in favor to Tulsa with all the small business that we have here. So you can kind of see the back half, or the last part of that line, September into early October, we're starting to see that search demand spike again for the holiday period for the rest of the year. So I'm excited to see that. This is kind of graphically looking at this search data. So the pink is where we currently have nonstop destinations, the purple unserved. So it's interesting to see markets like Seattle, San Diego, New York, markets that we don't have nonstop service, but we're obviously pushing hard for, with search demand above markets that we currently have service for today. So it really shows that people are getting back out. the size of bubble obviously is in terms of the number of searches. So you can kind of tell outside of some of our more business markets like a Dallas or a Houston, a lot of the outdoor leisure type destinations, Florida, Orlando, Phoenix, Seattle, places that people can get outside are really where we're starting to see a lot of demand pent up. So this is looking at it in terms of a graph in O&D data, or sorry, the percent increase, the chart on the right, the far right column, you can see the increase in search demand from 2019. So the things that are kind of interesting to highlight, again, the outdoor destinations are seeing the most amount of increase from 2019. And then when you look at more of our business type destinations, Houston, Chicago, San Francisco, those are back at least to 2019 search levels, but they're not seeing the increase like the leisure destinations are. So that's kind of indicative of what we're seeing with business travel. It's coming back, but it's definitely not, driving what our demand and search data is looking at today. And then finally, this is where we are at in terms of our top unserved markets today. The one obviously that sticks out there is New York City. But the three target markets that are still on there that we have incentivized highest, New York, San Francisco, and Seattle are ones that we're really focused on, and so on and so forth. So we're really focused on making the new markets work. If we can get DC to work, then hopefully we can get American or another carrier to do New York soon after. So we'll keep marketing it, keep pushing it, and keep meeting with all the airlines pretty routinely to kind of keep Tulsa on the map. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
No, it's a great job. Any prospects or probability, or are you betting man on New York or San Francisco?
So those top three, like I said, New York is really kind of indicative on how successful we make DC. So we're putting a large amount of work and money into marketing DC and making sure that is successful for American. San Francisco is a little bit trickier right now. A lot of the tech travel wise is kind of diminished with all the virtual work that all these tech companies, obviously Amazon just announced that they're letting people work remotely indefinitely, kind of matching what Google and Facebook are doing. So tech travel is really down right now. And as well as California just opening up as a whole. San Francisco, that's a tough sell right now, especially with markets that had service to San Francisco that still haven't had it return. So that will kind of be the first wave, airlines restoring their service to San Francisco, and then the airlines will start looking at new service. And then we're working really hard on Seattle as well. I'll be up there here in a couple of weeks meeting with Alaska, hopefully trying to get them to start service here. So
yeah,
we'll keep pushing.
Good deal.
Andrew, I know we have the number of passengers per day each week going, as far as we can tell, that's one of the elements that an airline would look at. What there are some markets that are probably not any better than that. What's another big factor when airlines are looking at us?
So a couple things outside of just pure demand, especially right now, is demand might be there, but the average fare, the revenue side of things, that part of the equation might necessarily not be as back as it is. The demand numbers are back, but airfares are still pretty cheap right now. Then a lot of the other kind of important things, business ties, how is the economy coming back? So that's why we really highlight, right now for unemployment, we're the 8th lowest in the United States. So that's obviously good for carriers to see when they see, hey, hopefully that means business travel will come back quicker in the state. So those types of things that they might not necessarily have access to. We show a lot of migration type data, over the past 4 years, just based on the census, where are people moving to and from Tulsa the most. We'll show for kind of the more leisure destinations, we'll pull secondary home ownership and show you know, in counties surrounding, you know, like a Miami, that was a big thing we showed American was, you know, there's 500 secondary homes in Northeast Oklahoma and the 4 surrounding counties around Miami-Dade. So that just shows that there's going to be kind of that constant back and forth, as well as, you know, people just visiting Miami or connecting beyond. So we've had to get creative in the ways that we show or pitch to airlines, because it's not right now, the O&D data itself, we're still showing 2019 data because that's the most relevant, because you showed 2020, there's nothing. So we've had to get creative in the types of data that we're showing the airlines, as well as showing the performance that we've had through the summer, showing how well we kind of rebounded through the.
So I assume they test our market to see how averse we are to price changes and so on, because each market, I mean, some markets are willing to pay a lot more money than we are. Is that what you're kind of saying there?
Yeah, and we're still, you know, when we one of the slides I'll show is we're about $50 higher average fare compared to the region of airports our size or larger. And so that kind of incentivizes the airlines. Hey, you can come in, you can lower the fare to, you know, $20, $30 and stimulate, you know, 50, 60, 70% and build up the market. So it might not necessarily be the thing that, you know, Tulsans like to hear, hey, we still have a pretty high average fare, but we do pull in a lot of traffic from, you know, Northwest Arkansas, who has even higher fares, and so on. So we definitely push, you know, the stimulation potential for, and, you know, the airlines obviously are always tinkering with
Right.
the airfares.
Thank you.
All right. Administrative finance and IT contract action. Number 3.
Me? Or you? Oh, number 3 is approve the October 6th, 2021 Tulsa Airports Improvement Trust Purchasing Policy, last dated October 14th, 2019. And that should be October 14th, 2021. We provided a red line to you. We had a discussion last week about, or last month, about adding some language about stock bonds and land, and we added that in there. I
Appreciate that.
Yes, and then, you know, there, of course, if you have stocks or bonds in a mutual fund or a retirement account, of course, that's not a conflict of interest. So that's in there too. And if you guys approve of those changes, we can put that in place.
Any other questions?
I'll move. I've read it.
Looks good to me too. So is that a motion?
Motion.
Second.
It's a motion.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Number 4 is approved use agreement by and between the city of Tulsa and Tulsa Airports Improvement Trust governing the use of and access to Tulsa Police Department's criminal justice reporting and records management system. This has been ongoing for a little while. The Tulsa Police Department is eliminating the traces reports and going to a more up-to-date system. We are in the process of training for that. This agreement allows us to continue to use their system, which is crucial. The installation has been delayed. It's a City of Tulsa project. It's not our delay, it's the City of Tulsa's delay, but we're still on track to go next spring.
Yeah, spring.
Is there a cost?
No cost.
Move approval number 4.
Got a question.
Okay.
Was the delay caused by the cyber attack or?
No, the contractor was having some issues.
All right.
Yeah,
And
not
is there
so.
plenty of firewalls and that sort of thing? I mean,
As far as
anytime
we,
you tie in other systems, then
yeah, so our IT actually has been working closely with those people throughout this whole process. So, yeah,
There's a dedicated
There's
VPN
a-
line
right.
between us and them.
okay. All right. Good deal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
I missed the second on that one.
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Number 5.
I'm gonna take number 5 and number 6 together. Number 5 is to accept proposal and award contract to TK Airport Solutions Incorporated for the PLC upgrade of passenger boarding bridge B6 and amount not to exceed $17,146.24. Number 6 is to accept proposal and award contract to TK Airport Solutions Incorporated for the PLC upgrade of passenger boarding bridge B8 and the amount not to exceed $27,240.38. And these were combined in our budget, fiscal year 22 budget, and they came in at over a little at $4,386.62 over what we had budgeted. And so we recommend approval.
We need to do it, right? They
Yes,
need to do
yes,
it.
we need to do it. So what this is the PLC is basically it's a mini computer
Yeah.
that allows the bridge to move. It controls that movement and it controls the auto leveling. So when the plane is being loaded and unloaded, it naturally goes up and down as passengers move on and off. And the bridge needs to follow that. So it helps keep the bridge from damaging the plane.
Okay. I've been stuck with bridges not being able
Yes.
to
That's never fun.
have a parachute to get off the plane. All right. We have a motion for items 5 and
Move approval 5 and 6.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carried. 7.
Item 7 is accept selection and approve award of contract for professional design services to Benham Design LLC in the amount not to exceed $49,600 for the runway 826 safety area improvements. This agenda item is not in our current budget. Operations officer was out checking the airfield and noticed something didn't look right with some drainage structures in the safety area of 826. We looked at it and identified that yes, these structures are in a safety area and they need to be removed, relocated. So we assembled a selection committee for selecting a consultant, and we selected Benham Design to rectify the problem. Management recommends approval of TAIT.
If I assume these are the part of concrete like storm sewers.
They're head walls, and there's roadways going out there, and you have a head wall at the end of a culvert going underneath the roadway, and it's within the safety area of 826. So we're either going to have to put the whole ditch and conduit or culvert, or we're going to have to relocate it completely. At this point, without a survey, we really don't know what the best solution would be.
So this is really just for the design services to figure out what to do.
Just the design
Right.
service, yes.
Move approval number 7.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Number 8.
Item 8 is accept selection and approve award of contract for professional design services to GH2 Architects in the amount not to exceed $36,305.82 for the mezzanine roof replacement project. Again, selection committee got together. We selected GH2 to perform the design, which will prepare plans and specifications to replace a portion of the roof on a terminal building. Management recommends approval.
How close are we redoing the whole roof? Seems like the roof comes up a lot.
Hopefully the roof doesn't come up a lot. Yes, this is one of the very first portions of the roof that we replaced. This roof is 18, 20 years old. This was roughly the same time the connector boulevard was
Yes.
out. So it's been on there since 02 roughly.
We've been around too long. When you gotta start repairing
Well,
the
I
stuff you
remember
replace,
back when
right?
It seems new to me.
And we have done a lot of roofs with the baggage claim roof
Right.
redone,
Yeah,
Schwab
that-
Hall roof.
right.
I mean,
There's a lot of roof up there.
There is.
They've all been completed at least one time since original.
Yeah.
So,
It's good news for our insurance company too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion for number 8.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Change orders.
item 9 is approved change order number 6, ticket counter terminal building project. Projects phase 4 with Myers Cherry Construction LLC in the amount of $7,184.41. Basically, this change order provides funding for 3 doors that were not originally in the contract. After looking at the project, we realized that we probably ought to replace those doors too, because they were the only ones that were not replaced on the project. So far, this project, change orders have increased the contract amount by 6%. Total contract amount to date is $6,242,263.73. And management recommends approval of item 9.
These aren't automatic doors. these
No,
are
sir.
just Door doors.
Their doors, one of them happens to be in a concrete block wall, and there's some modifications to the wall that has to take place as well.
Frank, the amount is $7,148.41.
That's right. I don't know what I said, but that's the price.
Okay, thank you.
Move approval number 9.
So,
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Item 10 is approved change order number 1, ARC vehicle with Rosenbauer, Minnesota LLC in the amount of $21,912.64. This new ARC vehicle has 4 seats in it. One of these items in this change order is to extend the intercom system to the back 2 seats. And also to install an onboard chemical testing system. Basically, it identifies the amount of foam that is mixed with the water, or the agent that's mixed with the water. And that is a requirement of the FAA. This change increases the contract amount by 2.9%. Total contract cost is $786,786.03. Management recommends approval.
how is this gonna be funded?
This is federally funded AIP funds,
100%, right?
100% because this is a 21 bond or grant.
Approval number 10.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Number 11.
Item 11, approved change order number 2, runway 18 right, 36 left, safety area interim. Pavement rehabilitation project with APAC Central Incorporated in the amount of $1,315. There was an existing light that was not lined up, and it was kind of in the way of a sign base to some extent, so we had to move that. But so far to date, the change order is a -2%. Total cost to date on this project, well, total contract price to date on this project is $11,331,287.40. Management recommends approval.
Motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Number 12.
Number 12 is approved change order number 1, QTA 450 plus upgrade with Petroleum Marketers Equipment Company LLC in the amount of -$129,730.41. QTA is a quick turnaround area for the rental cars. The 450 plus upgrade is an upgrade to the fueling system for the rental cars themselves. We bid this project with a base bid plus additive alternates. 2 of the additive alternates we ended up not using. The second additive alternate was to completely rewire the fueling tanks. We did not have to do that once we got into it. And the added alternate 3 was to replace the tank probes. Once we got in there, realized the tank probes were in good shape, we didn't need to replace those. So change orders to date is negative 43.3%. Total contract cost is $169,544. $169,544.62. Management recommends approval of item 12.
You want to do 13 too?
13, I'm going to withdraw.
Okay.
Motion to approve number 12.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. You can pull on 13.
Withdraw 13, please.
Okay. Number 14.
I'm gonna follow that up with withdrawing 14 as well.
Okay, 15.
15 is approved sublease agreement with General Services Administration on behalf of the Transportation Security Administration for TSA terminal space for 10 years effective December 1st, 2021.
Okay. And this doesn't have the clause.
No, Jeff looked at that.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. 16 and 17.
16 and 17 is to approve assignment of sublease and consent. Let me start back. Approve assignment of sublease and acknowledgement and consent to assignment from Frank G. Ebby Revocable Trust dated June 13, 2001 to Gary Gwynn, effective upon the closing but no later than October 31st, 2021. And 17 is approve acknowledgement and consent to collateral assignment from Gary Gwynn to Triad Bank, effective upon the closing, but no later than October 31st, 2021.
Motion 16 and 17.
16 and 17.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're
Opposed,
doing
no.
an inspection on that, Jeff.
Motion carries.
Before we do that, we do our inspection on that.
Yes, we inspect every hangar before we ever bring it to the board.
Number 18.
Number 18 is approve assignment of sublease and acknowledgement of consent to assignment from Oscar and or Brett Taylor to Cable LLC, effective upon closing but no later than October 31st, 2021.
Motion.
Move approval 18.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. 19 through 21.
Yes, 19 is approve assignment, sublease, and acknowledgement of consent to assignment from Daryl Willis to Johnson Arrow LLC. Number 20 is the mutual termination agreement with Johnson Arrow LLC. And 21 is approve a new commercial sublease agreement with Johnson Arrow LLC for 20 years with 1 5-year option to extend the term at the standard rate effective November 1st, 2021.
Approval.
Second.
19 through 21.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. 22.
22 is approved sublease agreement with Brad R. Marshall and Teresa Marshall Living Trust dated March 11, 2000 for 15 years with 2 5-year options to extend the term at the standard rate effective December 1st, 2021.
Move approval item 22.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. 23.
23 is approved sublease agreement with Jesse Schneider for 15 years with 2 5-year options to extend the term at the standard rate effective January 1st, 2022.
Approval. 22.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. 24.
24, approve assignment of sublease and acknowledgement of consent to assignment from Jennifer Bean to Worsham Investments LLC effective upon approval and subject to lessee completing required hangar maintenance no later than March 31st, 2022. Comes from our inspection of the hangar, and we noted a few things. So as long as they complete those maintenance issues, we're good to go by March.
Move approval 24.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any new TAIT business?
Yes, we need to discuss the November meeting if we can.
Okay,
The November meeting was scheduled for Veterans Day. Is that right? Veterans Day?
November 11th.
Yeah, and that's a holiday for TAIT. So if we can get our calendars out, we can cancel that meeting and maybe set a date for a new one. Or we can do it via email communication. What's your pleasure?
I'm
You
good
want to
with
do it
10th.
on, I mean, sometime that week, or what
It would
about?
be best to
reports?
have, it would be best to have it sometime that week if we could, because we've got a December meeting that will, if we go past that, we're gonna be bumping on meetings.
Yeah, so would the 12th work for everybody?
I can't be in 12th. I'm out of town. I'd be in
Yeah, I've
10th.
got a conflict on the 10th, 9th.
Would we do at 8:30?
Yes,
Mhm.
or anytime.
Or we, yeah.
No,
we
that would
could
be
do-
good.
Yeah.
I have an 11 o'clock, but
We'll be out by 11, sure.
On the 9th.
Yeah,
I can make it.
And what time is that?
It'll be
8:30,
8:30.
regular time.
I'll send a notice out,
Okay,
because we have to, well, I'll have to file it, so.
right.
So that'll be November 9th at 8:30.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any TAA business? Most sought after motion to be made today.
We're gonna make you wait.
We adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you all.
Yeah. We did make the 35-minute mark. so-
Now we had to talk.